You said you didn't see him online?
No, I was on.
Okay, we'll call the January planning and zoning meeting to order. The meeting properly noticed.
Yes, it was.
Okay, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Let the record show that all committee members are present except Bruce Knockreiner and Bob Grabarski sitting in for Jay Turco. Get a motion to approve the agenda.
Make the motion.
Jody and John. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Get a motion to approve the minutes from December 7th. And John, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Surveyors report.
Very little to tell you.
Sure.
Very little to tell you with the weather, the way it's been in the holidays, it's been pretty quiet. So the only thing I have to report is I will be in schooling the last week of this month. The annual school that I have to take, but that's all I have.
Okay, any questions for the surveyor? Moving on, register of deeds office.
About the same. December's been a little bit slower as well. I did meet online with the auditors and everything was going well. And that's their preliminary audit. They do the final audit in April. But we recorded our first electronic plat. That was a transportation project plat from the DOT for Highway 13 out here. First portion of it went really well, really happy with that. And I'm hoping that the county can move into the future with doing all electronic plats, so that way we don't have to buy those expensive cabinets and envelopes to store them. And then it was just a matter of digital signatures, and I know Dusty's already aware of that, because trying to figure out how to coordinate all that together is not easy. So we ended the year with revenue for Adams County just shy of $500,000. So we did pretty good for the county this year. So, and then this is my last meeting. So thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Love having you.
Thank
Questions for Jody? Hey, land information, Sam,
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. All right, so good news. The Adams County Land Information Office has been awarded $23,000 from the state of Wisconsin for the Next Generation 911 grant. We received the good news a couple weeks ago. This grant award will help assist our office in farming out our data for emergency 911. And for another note, the 2023 Wisconsin Land Information Plan grant was submitted to the state a few weeks before year end and was approved. We plan to receive these funds by the end of July 2023. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Sam? Okay, moving on to public hearings. Dusty.
The first application is for D Hobbs. This was tabled last month and the town still, they tabled it again at their meeting. So I would ask for another motion second to table.
Motion by Jody, second by John to table this hearing. Questions?
Yeah, Dusty, can you go, do you know why the township keeps tabling it?
I don't, that's, it's up to them, but they, I haven't heard really any specifics about why they want. I talked to the one applicant earlier today. They want more information. They're really reluctant to change it from business zoning district to Logan County Z. I don't know the details.
Thanks.
Okay, roll call vote.
Dolzel,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Gilmer,
Yes.
Chaffee,
Yes.
Kabarski,
Yes.
Carbolio,
Yes.
Hannah.
Yes.
Okay, motion to table passes. Next one.
The next application is for Vaughn Roads, same thing.
Jody and John, motion and second to table. Any questions on this one? Hearing none, roll call.
Peterson,
Yes.
Gilmer,
Yes.
Chaffee,
Yes.
Kabarski,
Yes.
Carbolio,
Yes.
Dolzel,
Yes.
Hannah.
Yes.
Okay, motion to table passes. Next one.
The next application is from Wilbur Ellis Company. This is in the town of Newchester, and the town did table this one as well. This one, I know the reason why. The town of Newchester requires that when it goes before the town, that the applicant sends certified letters to the neighboring property owners. And the company, or Wilbur Ellis didn't know that, so they postponed it a month to allow them time to do that for the next meeting.
Okay, need a motion to table. Jody, John, discussion, questions?
Yes.
Bob?
There's only one neighbor landowner, isn't there?
If you go 300 feet from the perimeter of the property, it probably gets up to more like 3 or 4. You got the railroad, you have, I think, Bula's would own right next door. There's another one to the north.
Yeah, it's irrigation field.
Yeah, but it doesn't go by houses, it's just if there's another property. I mean, an adjoining property owner. But yeah, that's what the town rules, that's how they have it set up there.
Okay.
Okay, roll call.
Gilmer,
Yes.
Chaffee,
Yes.
Kabarski,
Yep.
Carbolio,
Yes.
Dolzel,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Hannah.
Yes.
Okay, motion to table passes. Next one.
Well, for something different, let's not table this one. So the next applicant is for Patricia and Richard Kennard Jr. It's a rezone request for a portion of a parcel, 3 acres, from A135 exclusive ag with farmland preservation overlay to R1 large lot, single family residential large lot with farmland preservation overlay on property located in southeast quarter, northwest quarter, section 34, township 17 north, range 6 east. Parcel number 2-1234, town of Adams, the address is 2439 9th Drive. So the entire parcel is 40 acres. They are requesting to cut off 3 acres. In R1 LL zoning, 2 acres is the minimum lot size, so it does meet that requirement. In the notice, it does say that it would still have the farmland preservation overlay. Technically it does, but it doesn't apply because it's not an ag district, but it is still there. And in the packet, there is a map showing the approximate location of the 3 acres that they would like to cut off. I believe the applicant is here. If you have any questions for him.
The applicant like to add anything? Okay, any questions from the committee? Nobody? Okay. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone here who opposes this proposal? Hearing none, it's up to the committee.
I missed it, was a town equivalent.
Oh. yeah, I didn't even- Yes,
Tom did not object.
where do you have?
There it is.
There, okay. No, the town doesn't have Jim. Can you scroll down a little bit, see what meeting that was on? That way it was just last. December 20th is what their meeting was.
It's up to the committee. Jody,
I'll make a motion to approve the rezone request.
motion to approve and a second by John. Jody and John. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Sheedy,
Yes.
Kubarski,
Yes.
Carvalho,
Yes.
Dolzel,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Gilmer,
Yes. Okay, this will have to be before the full county board on January 17th at 6 P M.
And please don't leave without signing the form up or the sheet up here, please. And the next public hearing is for the Church Rooming House ordinance. I will share my screen. So this is, the tourist rooming house ordinance. It regulates the short-term rental of houses throughout, the vast majority of Adams County. There are a few exceptions as noted in the ordinance. Very few changes. It's a shorter ordinance, 9 pages. I expanded one definition. There's another change that said every tourist rooming house shall be operated by a resident agent. Everyone should, and I changed that to it shall have a resident agent. Further down, my title has changed in the last year since this ordinance was written, so that is corrected in the ordinance. And then 335-6-2, we have 200 of these licenses now in the county under this ordinance. We have yet to do one conditionally granted. Either you have the required information or you don't, so we took out that option. The biggest change is cleaning up the language, making it very clear that you can't have a public hearing on the initial application. We still notify the neighbors, and the day after they're issued a license, once anybody can demonstrate that that they're violating the ordinance, we can go right back to having a public hearing. The issue with having a public hearing before before a license is issued is it's basically all based on speculation. Plus the state ordinance or state statutes also say that we can't deny it anyway, or we can't prohibit them from doing this, which makes the public hearing portion pointless. But it is still there in the case of a violation. And if we go through that process and the license is revoked, the owner of the property can't even reapply to do rental again for 2 years. That is. That's 600. Anybody has any questions on the ordinance or changes?
Is it
Go
okay,
ahead.
Chair? Okay. The 25 mile for resident agent, was that something that we decided or that we're mandated to have?
No, there is no mandate on this at all.
Okay,
This is a completely voluntary ordinance for the county to have to regulate them. 25, there had to be a number, and it's pretty consistent with other municipalities that use the same ordinance. Village of Lake Dalton, I believe, has the same. I know Marquette County had the same, and there's other counties throughout the state that do too. There's no state model ordinance or anything for regulating these. It's kind of been the counties have come up with it, but just keep copying from each county to county.
so we don't have a real concrete reason for 25. It could be adjusted.
Absolutely. I haven't had too many issues with that. Every once in a while, somebody lives in, generally they live in that, the closest that situation ever comes up is I live in Madison, I own a place up here. I'm just outside of 25. Well, it's more like 40 or 50, and the whole purpose of having the resident agent is if there's an issue out at a rental property, I need somebody to be able to get there or respond or deal with the issue now and not maybe a 3-hour drive.
Can I make a suggestion at this point? I guess I would consider as a committee changing that number to minimum 45, maybe even 100, so that we can get some of the, oops, some of the outlying areas that do own these properties to be able to be their own resident agents. That's all I have to say.
Has there been any issue as of now with it? I mean, you just gotta have a point of contact to get there.
Right, and generally people use their cleaning person. That seems to be the most popular one. I know I have seen a couple of real estate agents act as that. Their dad that lives around the corner. I mean, it doesn't have to be a business doing it or anything like that. It's just, you know, their maintenance person, the guy that plows their snow. But somebody has the authority to go out there and deal with an issue.
So that person would deal with the issue. They wouldn't call whoever it is that's outside of the 25-mile radius.
That's between them, but I at least have somebody that I can contact that is close by and, hey, there's a fight going on out or a party going on out there, you need to go and take care of it.
So law enforcement would not be called.
Well, if it's a issue like that, or where they're breaking a law, then yes, sheriff's department's the one I expect. I mean, I would expect a neighbor to call. If it's something more, maybe law enforcement can't deal with it. That's where I take, you know. There really aren't a ton of cases where I would need that as opposed to law enforcement. But even if law enforcement was involved, that doesn't mean they can't be also. They go out there and remove the people from the property. That is, it's fairly common in a lot of the rental agreements that if you violate any of the rules, we can terminate the rental today or immediately.
Okay. I have another question, not related, so I'll let whoever else want to ask questions, go for it.
All right, so just to be clear, I don't have a horse in this race because Lincoln has its own housing deal. But I do have some observations I want to share and maybe think about it a little bit differently. So there's a lot of details in here that I think make it extremely restrictive and not necessarily favorable to a good experience for the renter per se, and especially growing the business. Some of the things that I've noticed in there, to your point, is the resident has to live so close. One of the other concerns I've got is like they can't have a grill on the property.
No,
It says no gas grill, no charcoal grill, no fire
within 10 feet of the house. There's also,
under any type of structure.
it can't be on a deck
Right.
and it can't be within 10 feet of the house.
Okay. I'm just wondering why we get so detailed into some of these minute things that just make it a nightmare to enforce or to manage, where that really falls back on that property owner and their insurance versus us saying, you know, oh, that's 9.5 feet, not 10 feet, you know, whatever. I'm just trying to like simplify this and take away some of the headache for the county to manage is my thought process on it. So just an idea.
It is fairly detailed and the idea is a safety issue and making sure everything's on a level playing field. The grill doesn't necessarily fit into that part of it. A lot of it does though. As far as enforcement, I do a site inspection on every one before I issue the permit. I glance out the patio door, nope, no grill. If they later do it different, I mean, you know, I leave and the grill goes back on the deck and something happens, well, they're also in violation of the ordinance, which is another issue they'd have in court if something ever did happen. Or the insurance company has an issue with. Most of the stuff in there is common sense, but there's a fair amount of detail in a lot of it.
Right. And I'm just looking, like ours is 2 pages, yours is 9.
Right.
So, I mean, do you need all of that? Or can we streamline it and make it easier for everyone to understand and execute? Just throwing it out.
Yeah,
Like I said.
and I guess the only thing I would say to it is I've licensed 200 of these in the last 3 years. We've gone through a renewal process of about 100 here in the last month. A lot of times when the app or people grab the packet, the application packet and start, they do get overwhelmed, even though if they just read it, it's pretty self-explanatory. They call and I'm like, okay, don't overthink it. Here's the things I need. And at that point, most of them are extremely happy that the process is as simple as it is for us. That's the feedback I've gotten.
Okay.
Yeah, Dusty, I don't know if I understood correctly or not, but did you say something about if there was either they didn't follow the rules or whatever, they couldn't reapply for 2 years?
If,
That's a really long time if they correct the issue and have it over with.
yes, except it's not a one-time issue. So the way I enforce the ordinance is you get one oops. You rent it to somebody and they trespass onto the neighbors. And that's the biggest issue or complaint that when I send out notices, that's what everybody's always worried about. Trespassing, dogs running, dogs barking, and parties at 3 a.m. Those are the big four. And so if somebody's trespassing, the owner of the property is responsible for that under this ordinance. Their rental or their license to rent is on the line every time they rent the house out. So if the renters, whoever goes in there, the tenant trespass on the neighbor, sheriff's department's call, and we can verify that it goes to that property. That's their first suit. The second time, now it's a pattern. And then it would go before the zoning committee. And there's a public hearing for possible revocation. Now, the committee may say, well, we're not gonna revoke it, but don't do it again. That would be an option, but by the time it gets there, it's at least happened a couple of times. It's not just a minor thing. With that being said, we've never had to use it. And I've had one verified complaint out of 200 properties in 3 years.
And this is tourist rental properties, not permanent rental.
Right. Yeah, the definition is 29 days or less. Yeah.
Sorry. So one other thing that you said that I think we need to think about a little bit is you're fairly lenient and with the policies and enforcement. And I don't mean that in a negative way, or maybe not lenient, reasonable. That's probably a better word for it. So your interpretation and enforcement upon discussions and things like that, I believe you probably approach people and have a discussion with them and say, hey, don't do this. But what happens if you take a different job?
Right. There
It goes
is,
to the code. So is it written the way we want it to be written for down the road?
the revocation is still in this committee's hands.
Mhm.
So even if, I guess the next person says, well, no, you one screw up and you're here. Then it's still up to the committee to say, okay, well, no, we're not revoking it. So it'd ultimately still be the elected officials answering to it, or
Decided.
right.
Okay.
Otherwise, the ordinance does talk about, what the ordinance is trying to protect and things that can be an issue and I think anybody that does come in could very possibly have a different interpretation or.
Enforcement of it.
Yeah.
All right, so what's the next steps after this? After we come to conclusion here, I assume we're gonna come to some type of vote, or what are the next steps on this?
Yep, so it would, if all goes according to, or the normal way would be, you can make motion amendment to change, for example, the 25, or like any details. Those are voted on, then the whole ordinance as amended would be voted on, and then it would go to the full county board for approval.
Okay.
Or, then I don't know if that's.
Review. Gotcha.
Questions? Okay, so when we're talking tourist rooming housing, when the owner of the property is in residence, do they have to follow some of these same rules under here or
No,
no?
no.
Okay, so it's very easy for someone to leave their grill on the porch or deck, head out and someone else come in,
Then they're in violation of the ordinance.
then they're in violation.
Another similar case is fireplaces. You have to have it inspected unless it's, if you can chain it off or make it inaccessible to the renter, I don't require the inspection at that point because it'd be pointless. But as the owner, if you want to use your fireplace, go for it. But when the renter's in there, and most of the places put signs up saying, you know, you can't use this, and I'll see the bike padlock a lot of times or cable chaining it off.
Okay, this other question I had is, in the beginning of the document, we have, can you, go up there,
How far?
all the way to the top, I think. I've looked at a lot of documents lately. Go down just, tiny bit, right there. Town of Rome, Town of Lincoln. At the last meeting, you said that other towns can adopt their own tourist rooming house language ordinance, however you word it. That is ongoing,
Yep, that's the part that did change there.
right?
Shall not apply to municipalities which adopted a tourist rooming house.
Okay.
Doesn't say adopted or have adopted.
Okay,
I put the note in there just to make
okay.
it a little clearer who
Yep.
has so far.
So will we see this document periodically when other municipalities say, you know what, we got enough tourist rooming activity, we want to do our own? And then they're gonna just be added that they have their own.
The next time it's ever revised, because it's just a note, it's as of that date, this is what it is.
Okay,
And then 5 years from now, if somebody else does, and we change this ordinance for whatever reason, then I would add it in at that time.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
If you were found to be in violation, say you left the grill on there, the renter left the grill on there. And you issued a violation, would that in fact affect the owner's insurance policy? Could they deny it because they were in violation?
I would say that exactly what he said. I would say it's up to the insurance company. I don't see that happening a lot. Throughout any of the types of permits or licenses we issue. But I guess if the insurance company found out that, you know, you weren't operating it under those terms, one person I did have licensed, he didn't want it that close to the house because, he was worried the house was gonna catch on fire.
But my concern is for the homeowner, it'd be like another nail in the coffin for him not being covered. Because he was in violation of an ordinance that you put in so many words in the ordinance, now he's in violation. And his mortgage is gonna be up, his insurance is gonna be dropped, and it's because you put so many words in your violation, in your code, that he ain't covered. It'd be a
It's a
nail in
voluntary-
his coffin.
Right, it's a voluntary program, nothing saying they have to rent. We try to make it straightforward, and when they apply, they know what it is, and then when I usually do the site visit, or a lot of times when I do the site visit, they're out there and we go through a lot of these things, and it's the first thing I tell them is that, you know, if there's issues, here's what's gonna happen.
So potentially they could lose coverage.
That's up to the insurance company. I've never talked to an insurance company about it.
Anybody else? Wow.
Yeah, I've been in the rental business, not tourism, but regular, and to predict and guide what renters do is pretty difficult as an owner. And usually we end up fixing stuff and so forth, and I think that's why there's so many houses and stuff sitting empty in our county. That all being said, the part about the 2 years still bothered me. I would love to see that change to, say, 6 months. I mean, basically, that's a season. Or it used to be. Now, of course, there's winter and stuff that people do a lot of recreating in Adams County. But I don't know. I put that in the form of an amendment, if that's what you want, or I would advise it being changed away from the 2-year to 6 months.
And that would be up to the committee. The only thing I can say is that that sentence is I guess I pretty strongly feel that sentence is the most impactful reason that the rest of the ordinance is complied with. And the short-term rentals, it's a little bit different than like having somebody come in for like a year lease or something like that. A lot of times these, there's a number of emails back and forth, possibly phone calls. There is insurance. I mean, most of these go through like Airbnb, VRBO, the big major players. With the rating system, it doesn't seem to be as big of an issue. We do have quite the range of renters. Some they own the property and they grew up on the lake and they want to share that experience with others. That's why they provide it. And others are just show me the money. A lot of times the show me the money are the ones that have the issue because they're not screening their people who are going to rent, and over renting or renting to say a bachelor party. That's one of the big. Those are where the parties happen and where the complaints come in. And that's in general across the country, but so by screening it out, because they know that their license is on the line every time they run.
Just let me ask you this, we talked about the money, the county gets a share of the money, not just a permit, is that correct?
No.
Or does it go to townships or?
There is, if a town chooses to adopt a room tax ordinance, and at this point, most have, there's still a couple, 3 that haven't, they don't have many rentals. If a town chooses to have a room tax ordinance, they're responsible for collecting it. They can keep, they have 2 options, either submit 70% of that to, say, the Adams County Chamber of Commerce, or set up their own tourism board. And that money has to go towards advertising that community. But the county, Adams County doesn't get it, but the chamber does, or the local municipality, but they have to spend that on, well, 70% of it on advertising.
Thanks for clearing that up, Dusty.
Mr.
I
Chair,
just feel we've had 200 of these and it's been almost 2 years now, and we've had one, you've had one, and nothing's been brought to the committee. I just feel it's working.
Okay, so a couple of questions here. One to expand on that gentleman's over there. Question, when a violation is reported, is this like a municipal violation, like the sheriff goes out and writes them a ticket, or what is it?
A lot of times those are it depends on what the issue is. If I get a complaint that says they have, these are occupancy limits in this, let's say they're limited to 10, and I'm getting reports that they have 16 people out there. I go out, knock on the door, verify if they have 16 or 10. At that point, it's not a municipal violation, but it is a violation of this ordinance. That was your oops. I get called 2 weeks later, go back out for the same complaint. Now we're going to the revocation process. Again, it's never happened. If it's trespassing, fireworks, noise, dogs running at large, anything like that, now the sheriff's department's involved. I don't have the ability to enforce those, but and the sheriff's department generally notifies me when they go out and make contact. Well,
That was the key part to my follow-up question is how do you know if, say, I have a tourist room house next to me, I call the sheriff's department, but I don't call you? Do you ever find out about it?
Generally I do. And we had a couple of situations. I said I only have 1 complaint, and that's 1 verified. I had a couple others where they said when the sheriff's department went out there, they found out it was a rental and they needed to notify me. But it ended up not being no tickets were issued, no warnings, no anything.
Okay, and now that leads me to a follow-up, so, and this is just a personal example, so we had a trespasser from, I can't, different situation, I understand, but we asked that the sheriff, the deputy, uses discretion as to whether to issue a ticket or not. We still had to complain, he did not issue a ticket, how would you view that?
I don't require a ticket if it's a verified complaint. If the sheriff's department says, yes, he was there, we chose not to issue a citation, that's still a violation. Or, it's still your oops.
And then just kind of one other thing is, how do you prove the violations? Is that the only way to prove the thing? You have to call the sheriff's department or something? Or you-
That's the easiest way. I mean, if the sheriff's department deputy goes out there and says, well, yeah, we follow the footprints back to that house and, you know, they admitted they were over there. That's obviously the easiest way. Otherwise, if I go out to, the example I gave about being over the limit, I knock on the door. If I end up in court over it, it's my word against theirs.
So you
It would be up to
can-
the judge.
You can be notified or the sheriff's department, either or.
If it's a law outside of this ordinance, I would certainly recommend call the sheriff's department first, because I can't go out and write a ticket for trespass.
Sure, I
Right.
understand.
But if it's too many people, the sheriff's department, put mildly, doesn't care. Because that's not an ordinance they can enforce, that would be up to me.
And then just the last thing I found, do you actually go out and inspect 200 of these a year, or is it just one time?
It's a 2-year license. So it's on initial application. And then if there's any reasons I believe I generally go out on a renewal. Doesn't have to be if I'm very familiar with the property.
Well, you're a busy person. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Question and observation. From the questions that were presented, including by the committee, would appear that a lot of these people either have had a very short, would appear that the board members have had a very limited time to examine this particular ordinance. And they've asked a lot of questions, which indicates to me they have not had much input into the final product before they have to vote on it. So if you could make a comment to those two questions for me, thank you.
Yep, the ordinances were emailed to the committee either a full 2 or 3 weeks ago. If, like any ordinance, you put it out there, if the committee at the time of public hearing would like to change it, then it goes through the amendment process. Or like I said before, motion to amend it as presented. But yeah, the committee has had it for, when, do you remember when you emailed it out? The ordinances? 2 weeks. But they did, it was also the same agenda that was on, or excuse me, the same ordinance that was on last month's agenda. So really, it's been closer to 5 weeks.
Cynthia wants to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, as it relates to the revocation, I pulled up the town of Rome. I don't have Lincoln here, but the revocation, because it was mentioned by one of the board members there, something about the term, you know, how long the turnaround. Well, for Rome, it says upon revocation of a short-term rental license under this section, a renewal application will not be permitted until after January 1st of the next calendar year. So we are, we're 24 months versus Rome, who's the January 1st of a following calendar year. I don't know Lincoln. I wasn't able to quickly find that one. Perhaps someone could speak to that as far as Lincoln's, but I think there was some concern brought up about the time frame there.
Yeah, Rocky.
Answer for Cynthia.
No.
Okay, Jody.
When we're talking occupancy, and you get a complaint and you go out, occupancy is when they're putting their heads on the pillow, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Now, I mean, you could go out to a complaint Oh, no, you know, Joe and Bobby Sue, they just came because we're up here and it's convenient for them to come. Well, now you're counting 2 extra people that aren't gonna be there at night.
Correct.
So how does that all, I mean, it's a little weird if you ask me. I mean, are you going out there at midnight and saying, okay, everybody, let's get up?
I've never had to do it.
Okay.
I mean, I've never received that complaint. At the time, I would figure out,
So you're gonna take that into consideration when you do, who's staying here physically, who's just
right,
visiting?
your ordinance doesn't, I mean, if I had a bonfire and I invited a bunch of friends over because I'm renting this house, that's fine. If I go back and say at 6 a.m. and they're all waking up and I see 30 people piling out of the house. It's an issue.
Okay. Did you find anything with Lincoln?
Lincoln.
I'd like to say,
Lincoln just, there's no time period on the Lincoln one from what I can see.
Yes, sir.
that's why these issues, we're talking about too many people. These issues we're talking about too many people in these complaints. And that's why the proximity of the post and the housing unit is close. That's why we have the 2-year penalty. I mean, that gets my attention right away to take care of these issues. So it doesn't rest necessarily on the county, it rests basically on the property owner.
You want to, I don't know if everybody understood the standpoint from where you're coming from. You care if I,
Well, they're saying, what about all these issues? What do you do, Dustin, if you get 30 people piling out of this house, you know?
I mean, your involvement in the process.
Oh, my involvement in the process, I have a roof. that I
Yes.
rent out.
So he is one of the landlord, or rental properties we are referring to. I just want to make sure everybody understood where you were coming from on that.
I assume the responsibility.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Granted, Dusty hasn't had a lot of issues with this, only one that resulted in him writing something, I guess. But once it gets in print and once it's in this ordinance, if that's what it's called, then I mean, if it passes, that's it. And it's not just trust Dusty, he'll do it right and so forth. It's in print. And unless you put some sort of limitations on it, you know, we have to trust the director entirely. And that bothers me a little bit. Not that I don't trust you, Dusty. That's not it.
No, I get it.
So, all right,
Are you referring to the 2-year part?
not necessarily.
Oh.
I mean, everything as it's spelled out here, and of course, you gotta have more and more stuff that you get spelled out. And I guess what we don't have in here, and it probably is in here somewhere, if the dog poops on the neighbors and doesn't clean it up. I mean, there's just, where do you draw the line?
Right, and I mean, the vast majority of this the vast majority of the ordinance isn't changing. And this is what the county board adopted 3 years ago. There's only a couple of minor changes happening here, I guess I would say. But then I go back to, I don't have the authority, so when there was an issue, I noted it in the file, like I made contact with the owner and said, okay, yeah, on this date, here was the issue. And then when it happens again or whatever, that's when it would come before the committee. So,
But you don't have, according to the way this is written, you don't have to give them an oops.
no, but it's still, but the ordinance is very clear that the only person that can revoke or the only way it can be revoked is after a public hearing in front of this committee.
Okay.
I don't have that authority.
All right, thanks.
Okay, Mike Baker.
I'd like to address a couple of issues that have been brought up. First one is the 25-mile distance for the resident agent. The 25-mile designation is so that if there's a complaint, that resident agent can respond fast enough to resolve that complaint, if at all possible, before law enforcement would have to be called to intervene. Secondly, what we do in the town of Rome, which seems to be very effective, is that when their renewal comes through, the renewal is submitted to the, first off, the police department as well as the fire department for their approval. This way, the police department can check to see if there's any complaints that they were called upon that were not handled by the special resident agent. The fire department does their inspections yearly. So the 2-year permit renewal seems kind of long-term to me. I think 1 year would be more appropriate. I don't know that Dusty would need to do all these inspections himself if he has people in his department that are qualified to do a fire department inspection as well as a building code inspection for any other violations that might have occurred during that 2-year period. I think that some of these issues that people are concerned about could just be taken care of by having a shorter renewal period so that things can't be changed that drastically in that 2-year period, and the county's not aware of that. Also, one other issue is that the town of Rome uses a company called Host Compliance, which is a company that monitors all short-term rentals for occupancy, the number of vehicles. It also monitors residences or homes that may be renting that are not licensed to do that properly. I talked to Dusty about this about a month or so ago, and he thought that the expense was too great for the county to undertake this type of process. In speaking with the Rome Town Administrator, I found out that the costs were approximately $4,000 a year, possibly for our community anyway, and that we split that cost with our tourism bureau in the town, so it came out to about $2,500 a piece at the time. I think that money might be well spent to save all the inspections that Dusty says he's required to do every 2-year period. So that might be something else that the committee would like to look into prior to adopting this tourism rooming house ordinance. Thank you.
So just to respond to some of those comments, we don't do fire. We don't require the fire department to do an inspection. If there's a fireplace, then the person has to hire a chimney installer or a fireplace installer or like a chimney sweep to come out, do an inspection, and then supply that information to me. That's not an inspection we do. At the time of issuing licenses or at renewals, we do not do building code inspections. If the health department does something along those lines, that is a completely separate license that they go through, but we do not require that, or I don't do that. Mine is more verifying room dimensions, seeing if there is a grill, that the fire extinguisher is still on the counter or nearby. That the licenses are posted, some of those types of things. My inspections don't take very long, but we don't do most of those. I have looked at the company, maybe someday, but as of right now, our office is handling it well.
Scott?
So kind of going back to my original thought process here, and it kind of goes in line with what the gentleman from Rome was talking about. There's a lot of meat in this ordinance, and some of it's not necessary, I don't think, from a county level. I think that if you look at a much more streamlined, easier to enforce code of just the most important things, we would have something that's more manageable for you and your department. And on the flip side of it, it's not preventing any town from putting in place their own ordinances that are more restrictive, like the town of Rome is obviously more heavily in tourism and things along those lines in some of our other areas around the county. So do we want to look at kind of revamping this and taking it down, just the things that are the most important pieces, and letting the towns, if they feel like there's an issue with vacation rentals, that they manage that themselves to the level of scrutiny that they choose, versus us dictating, for the entire county, that it's not as big of an issue for different portions of the county.
What do we want to do next?
If they want to amend it, or
Well,
scrap the amendments altogether, or
what do you want to go next?
I guess my next suggestion would be, if any of the things, motion, second, votes on changing, those go out. So I think the ones that were brought up were
Anybody want to make a motion on changing this ordinance?
No, but I'd like to say something.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the rules in place, and I have a rental myself, not even in this county, but they are actually in place to protect the property owner as well as the renter. This grill on the deck that seems to be beating up everybody, I love that rule. I mean, where our rental was, the grills were a disaster that way. They ended up finally having to make in that, there's 100 rentals in there. No grills, period, that are portable. They had to be fastened down to 10 feet away from the house, and because that was probably the biggest problem they had, was grills, and that seems to be a bugaboo here. But I think most of these rules are protecting the owner as well as the renter and the next door neighbor.
Okay, any motions for changes, or should we just adopt the ordinance? Or what is our next step?
those are. Well, the ordinances, this ordinance is in effect and it's been adopted, for 3 years. Either
Make a motion to accept the changes?
as presented or make a motion to amend.
Yeah, and entertain a motion to accept the changes.
I'll make a motion to accept the new ordinance as printed.
I need a second. I'll second. Motion and second to accept the changes. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Dolzel,
No.
Steven,
Yes.
Gilner,
Yes.
Sheepy,
No.
Kowarski,
No.
Carvalho,
No.
Hannah,
No.
Okay, motion fails. Anybody else want to make a motion? Mr. Turco? AKA Bob?
Well, I would move to amend and reduce that 2 years to 1 year as a compromise.
A motion to reduce the time to 1 year from 2. We have a second?
I'll second that, but I would like to add other stuff.
One thing
I
at a time,
Can we take one at a time?
separately. Okay, you'll second Bob's motion on reducing the time to 1 year for renewal of violation.
For revocation of the permit, not for renewal.
No,
Okay,
time
So-
before you can reapply,
great,
reduce it to 1 year.
correct.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Hearing none, roll call?
Steven,
Yes.
Gilner,
No.
Sheepy,
Yes.
Kowarski,
Yes.
Carvalho,
Yes.
Dolzel,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Reduce that to 1 year. Now, next one, Jody.
Well, this is really gonna, I'm sure, impress everyone. I'm still stuck on the whole grill thing. If it's raining cats and dogs, you're not gonna be standing out 10 feet away from your. But you know what I'm saying? Well, that can, you can't,
It's in there. It says it can't be covered.
you can't cover it. So, you know, I mean, I understand you're protecting the property owner, but in effect, you're not unless that sucker's bolted down somehow. Someone in the rain is gonna bring that grill up onto the porch that's covered.
Well, it's a violation.
I understand that, but I just think it's
Dustin, how many,
impractical.
excuse me, but how many have you been out and had to say something about the grill? Other than the initial inspection?
Oh, other than initial, never. I've never received a complaint. Like I said, the one owner, he was worried about, so he ended up, he lived about 100 yards away and he kept seeing the tenants moving it. He got very upset in the middle of a rental one weekend, went down there, grabbed the grill, poured concrete about 15 feet from the house and chained the grill to the concrete. That was his choice. We don't require anything like that. But he was upset because he didn't want that house to burn down. So he did it on his own.
Just another quick point on that, you better include the turkey cookers.
It says any similar devices, but
Yeah, am I wrong or not? Isn't, and I'm realizing we're not Madison, but isn't in a lot of these city ordinances, that ordinance that you cannot have it within 10 feet of the house or grill?
it's very common. Most of the stuff in this ordinance is standardized. It's been, over the years, been tweaked by various municipalities for even the 25-mile thing. But yeah, I didn't come up with that on my own. I'm not that creative.
Well,
Anna?
Like, okay, but he just pointed out the property owner can, like, when you're renting out a place, the property owner can say you can't have the grill on the deck. And so then you're violating whatever you do when you rent. I don't know what you do when you rent, but with the property owner, you're violating that anyway. So why do we have to protect the property owner from the people when he could, or she, whatever, when they could do it themselves?
So what are you suggesting?
I'm just pointing it out, that the property owner can make whatever rules they want when they rent out their property.
Jody?
so I concur with what Hannah's saying. If they're upset that their house could catch on fire, then have them do what they need to feel secure about that with their grill. Whatever
So
that
we should
takes,
throw it
whether
out
it's
the window.
cement or whatever, it doesn't really take for us to be overseeing it.
So you're saying we should throw it out completely?
Well, I
And
think,
let the
I think
homeowner
we
figure
should,
it
I
out.
should think we should take the grill aspect out. Fire pits, my God, if you have them that close to the house, then stupid should hurt. But do you know what I'm saying? So
So you're
yeah.
also protecting the renter, because we've got renters that are not smart enough to move it 10 feet from the house.
Okay, but then the property owner should take that into consideration and put the grill where they want it.
And this can apply to any of the rules we make in our life.
Right, so we don't have to be so watchful is my point. So yes, I would amend the ordinance to remove the grill aspect.
Paragraph.
Is that your motion?
Where is it?
Paragraph, the 335-5 D.
Are we in the middle of the motion? We're not in the middle of the motion, are we?
No, just the one you're about to make.
All right, so can you get to that? I'm sorry. Shall not have a hibachi, gas-fired grill, charcoal grill, or other similar devices used for cooking, heating, or any other purposes on any balcony deck or under any overhang structures or within 10 feet of any structures. So I would say to remove that, where is the fireplace? Fireplace is above that. Okay, so I would propose an amendment to remove number 10.
We have a second? Bob Kubarski, seconds. Okay, motion and a second to remove the grill option,
Paragraph 10. Yeah.
paragraph 10. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call?
Gilmer,
No.
Shavy,
Yes.
Kubarski.
Yep.
Carvalho,
No.
Dolzel,
Yes.
Peterson,
No.
Hannah,
Yes.
Okay, 3-3 tie, motion fails. That's why we have 7 members. John,
All right, I'm gonna make a bigger motion. So my motion is gonna be that we put this off for, or table this for about 30 days. And rewrite it down to just the bare minimums of what's the most important issues. And streamline what needs to be in here for the county.
you want to change the whole ordinance?
I want to streamline it and make it a lot simpler.
It's been in place and working for 3 years. You want to change it?
It's not enforceable.
John, the mic a little closer.
Sorry, it's not enforceable.
We've been enforcing this for 2 years and
Well,
I don't understand.
Enforcement, if you're saying that it's enforced because we've only had one incident where we've had to do something, that doesn't mean that it's enforced. If someone decides to have a fire in a fireplace that's not inspected because the chain with the lock across it is loose, it's not enforceable. If there's 20 people in a house that's only supposed to have 10, it's not enforceable. So we've got a bunch of rules, we've got a bunch of stuff written here on paper, but we don't really have a means of identifying actual breakdowns or violations of this code. The other piece of that is, was brought up by one of my peers here, that the homeowner's free to do whatever they need to do to protect their property. And that shouldn't fall on us as our responsibility. That should be up to them to protect their own property. So if they need to concrete their barbecue 15 feet away from their house, that's their choice. Doesn't need government to tell them that they should do that.
Amen, brother.
But this goes back, still goes back to, I, as a town chair, have had no complaints since this came in.
There's a
Once,
motion.
but just let me finish. Just when you tell people, when they're saying, well, the guy next to me is renting, because they get the letter, and they want to know what, they come to me a lot of times before they go to Dusty, so they know what they're talking about. And you say, well, they've got to be licensed, and there's going to be rules, and all the problems seem to go away when they know there's rules to the next door renter.
Okay, we have a motion to table the ordinance.
I'll second it.
Motion and second to table. Any discussion? Huh?
Just a clarification, we currently have the other one in place right now, and that will stay in place.
Stays in place.
Okay, and the fact is that if in fact this is to be streamlined, the other one will still be in place
Until
until
the new
such
one gets
time.
approved.
Okay,
Okay, motion and second to table the ordinance. Roll call.
Shavy,
Yes.
Kubarski.
Yep.
Carvalho,
Yes.
Dolzel,
Yes.
Peterson,
No,
Hannah,
Yes.
Gilmer,
No. Okay, motion passes. Table. Next one.
All right, so the next public hearing is for the revision of the shoreline zoning, shoreline wetland. Excuse me, before I get there, I wanted to introduce my new employee. It's Dan in the back, if you want to stand up. He's been with the office now for a couple of weeks. I told him I'd get him out of here by 4:30, so I probably should do this before we start the next ordinance. But that's Dan. He is the part-time position that we've been working on filling for a good chunk of the year. And he'll be concentrating mainly on the shoreland areas, town of Quincy. I am doing a few other things too, so.
Okay, Dan, welcome aboard.
Thanks a lot. The next public hearing is on the shoreline, wetland and habitat protection ordinance. You'll see a lot of reds and blues in there. There's a lot of formatting changes. The primary change, most of the shoreline ordinances mandated by the state. Saying, and it's a minimum and maximum ordinance. The primary changes in here is, I took out the part about sanitary regulations because that's just given, because there's another ordinance that talks about septic systems. And then there is a section. So it talks about special exception conditions. That's a little, any conditions can be put on a special exception, doesn't have to be spelled out. There's a section coming up here for the administration of the ordinance that is now housed in a completely different ordinance, so we deleted, or I deleted it out. And then the biggest primary change in all of this is deleting the Conservancy District. A little background on that, the Conservancy District was created back in the early 70s. It was a map given, my understanding, from the DNR. It was mainly areas that were wetland and floodplain. The map was adopted, overlaid over the whole county, even outside the shoreland areas incorrectly. Since the time that was adopted, we now have floodplain zoning as required by FEMA and the DNR. And we also have a wetland district within shoreline zoning. Those were the two primary reasons that the Conservancy District existed. In the Conservancy District, you can do almost nothing. My proposal is to eliminate the Conservancy District. Anything that is mapped as wetlands by the DNR, by ordinance is automatically mapped as wetland. So as we get rid of the Conservancy District, the areas under shoreline zoning would be changed to a different district, depending on if they're mapped as wetland. If they had already gone through a rezoning to go to general purpose, or the default would be recreational residential, which is in general one of the more lenient ones. That's what the vast majority of shoreline zoning is. And that's
Mark Beta? Yes.
All right. So my name is Mark Beta, and I do have shoreline property. And I would like to ask the committee that you vote no, or at least postpone this ordinance until the comprehensive zoning ordinance revision has been completed, and I'll list my reasons. The first, there were a lot of things presented at the last meeting all at once. And with the holidays and things like that, I just feel there isn't a lot of time to consume this information and digest it. So I would ask for at least a postponement in that regard. The other thing I noticed is there are inconsistencies between the shoreland zoning ordinance and the comprehensive zoning ordinance revision. They might be small, but I believe they could cause some confusion. in the
They
future.
gotta turn you on, so.
And what I'm basing that off of is my interpretation of a statute, Wisconsin statute 59.692C, which says ordinances that are enacted under this section shall accord and be consistent with any comprehensive zoning plan or general zoning ordinance applicable to enacting counties so far as practical. So I would hate to see us put this through now, have to go back and amend it again, go through all this process, when it could just wait until we finish the comprehensive zoning ordinance revision, then revisit the shoreline ordinance revision and have that updated. Finally, a question, and this is for Mr. Grant. Did NR 115 or did Wisconsin statute 59692 change since we last redid this ordinance? What is prompting these changes? And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
So the shoreline ordinance and the general zoning ordinance apply in two different areas. They can overlap. Anytime there is an inconsistency, which is perfectly acceptable, the more restricted is what applies. Like I said, most of the shoreline ordinance is dictated by the state as far as what can be in there. To my knowledge, nothing's changed. The purpose of this is I'll be honest, property owner rights, Conservancy District is ungodly restrictive. You cannot build anything there. I don't think that's okay. So my proposal is to get rid of the Conservancy District. The Conservancy District is also unnecessary because it's in the floodplain. There's a whole ordinance that regulates that FEMA tells us what, well, FEMA and DNR say what can be in that ordinance. Why have a second set of ordinance regulating the exact same, or a district that's really restrictive when you're in the floodplain, you're in the floodplain, it doesn't matter what the shoreline ordinance is. So that's the primary drive for this, is to get rid of the Conservancy District. Because it is, there are a lot of areas that aren't mapped as floodplain or wetland, high, dry, woods or whatever, that right now you can't build on without spending $400 to go through a rezoning process through the county.
Can I add just a question to that? So for example, we're on White Creek.
Mhm.
And we're between Easton Pond, Easton Lake, and the dam at Pfeiffer's. Pfeiffer's Dam has been out of service for years. It's just wide open. So like in our case, it shows a floodway on part of our place, but does that actually even exist anymore? And how would somebody go about changing that?
So that's a completely unrelated question to this.
Okay,
Floodplain ordinance is floodplain ordinance. The short answer is you need to hire a surveyor to go shoot elevations and go to FEMA.
okay, but that, and that's the way to mitigate around these shoreline ordinances, is if you feel there's a discrepancy. you
No.
survey.
Because the floodplain ordinance has a certain way that you can get out of the floodplain. If you went, and that's what does happen quite a bit. People go through the process to get out of the floodplain. Great. FEMA's good with it, DNR is good with it, you're high and dry. That Conservancy District still exists. And you still have to go through the $400 process of rezoning it out of the Conservancy. Even though the reason it was even put in Conservancy, you just proved us wrong.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike Baker.
One thing that just came to mind is Dusty's new title being the director, that all through this document, it refers to him as the administrator. So I think that needs to be changed right away. And also just the housekeeping type thing, the realignment of all the subtitle letters or whatever for each paragraph needs to be corrected. And that's all I have at this point.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
So when you have a conservancy, you save money on your taxes, correct?
Absolutely not. Taxes and zoning have absolutely nothing to do with each other in any way, shape, or form.
So there's no money savings by having.
Not based on zoning, correct?
Dusty,
About a conservancy easement regarding tax.
Again, that has nothing to do with zoning. If you have a conservation easement through, like a CREP program through DACAP or DNR, that has nothing to do with zoning,
But it does involve tax benefits.
but it has nothing to do with Adams County even. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that is one way to get a tax break is, or I guess you get tax incentives, for a conservation reserve program. Another example would be managed forest law. That has absolutely nothing to do with zoning. Adams County doesn't even administer it. That's a DNR thing. You do get a tax break, but it has nothing to do with what your property is. So just because there's a conservancy district, shoreline zoning is, as I said, a state mandated ordinance, 300 feet from a river, stream, or creek, or 1,000 feet from a lake. By state law, that's where it has to apply. Once you picture that bubble, it gets divided up into various districts. We have recreational residential, which is your house, or areas where you would build your house. General purpose, which is a lot of your businesses, it's a little more liberal with district. Wetland, conservancy. Conservancy, you can't do anything. Wetland, you can't do anything, but that's mapped by the DNR. So the proposal is to get rid of the conservancy district. You're still in shoreline zoning. It would just have a different district applying to you. But as far as taxes go, if you have wetlands on your property, that affects your taxes. It doesn't matter what it's owned by.
But what I was getting at is the conservancy is, the way I was led to believe was put in place so the owner gets a tax break. And then it's to make the land more natural and not to have development on it.
The second part of that would be accurate. And the tax break, no, generally the idea in the early seventies was we'll label this as conservative or
Green spots.
an area we want to conserve, okay? But the areas they picked were floodplain and wetland. Because there was no other protection for those areas at the time. Now we have a whole ordinance that regulates the floodplain portion, and we have a district that is specific to wetlands. The Conservancy District picked up a lot of areas in between. And that's, or where it was mapped incorrectly for floodplain. So if it's a wetland, it's still gonna be protected as a wetland. It, maybe there's a 500 yards in between, say, two different wetlands, now it'd be removed. And you could build in the middle of that, whereas right now, in all probability, the Conservancy District would prevent you from doing that. But it's high and dry, and
I guess I'm just concerned, everybody moves up here for the nature of it. And people want to conserve conservancies or wild natural areas. And when they set it aside as, if you're eliminating conservancies, then my fear is if it's not wet or a floodplain or this or that, then people are gonna be building on places that were a long time ago intended to be a conservancy, where it would stay natural, even though it's not a wetland or it's not this or that. It still could be a prairie or could be a conservancy.
But sir, in most of these almost all of these areas that Dustin's trying to get this taken care of are areas along a creek or a stream that is already taken care of by the floodplain ordinance. It's
Yeah.
not a prairie conservancy or anything like that, like the bluff or anything like that, how that's listed. This is, he's trying to bring up a map right now, I see, and the maps on this were done back in 1977 or 78, I think, weren't they, Dusty? And they were, most of them were done with a colored pencil. And so they didn't follow, they might be 75 feet on one side of a creek and 300 or 400 feet on the other side of the creek. There was no rhyme or reason because it wasn't digitalized.
yeah, oh, sorry.
Scott?
I have a question. And the question is, the EPA passed new regulations dealing with wetlands and waterways, et cetera. And that was signed off by a presidential directive here around Christmas time. And my question to you is, will that have any impact on your shoreline rules and regulations? Obviously, you probably don't know what they are. No one does, I suppose, until they come down. So you might want to consider, again, delaying this ordinance until you find out if there's going to be impact upon it because of these new rules coming down.
I'm not aware of anything in that would change, and I mean, I'm not an expert in by any means. I'm not aware of anything that would change the shoreline ordinance, plus that it's a state ordinance anyway. The Conservancy District isn't super common. You know, it's one of the few things in the ordinance that the county has the discretion to have or not have. There is no requirement. I guess I don't see where too many things from the EPA. I don't have any doubts that they have water standards. As far as vegetation removal along the shoreline, that's something that shoreline zoning has to regulate. So I guess I don't see where the EPA part would necessarily come in. For those of you who can see the computer right now, anything in yellow, so and I apologize for, maybe you can, okay. So the black spots in the middle there are the lakes. This is over kind of in the Oxford area, Deep Lake, Parker. Anything in yellow is recreational residential. You can build on it. That's generally what you're gonna see. The areas in pink are mapped as wetland, and the areas in green are conservancy. So around your major lakes, Deep, Parker, Crooked, there are no green. There's a couple of those are natural ponds, small. That's what the Conservancy District would be, or that's where the Conservancy District is, excuse me. So essentially, those green areas would become most of that green area would become the yellows, is the idea here. Doesn't mean people are gonna flock to build on those little potholes. We did have a situation a couple of months ago, I guess it was. The town of Lincoln did want to add on to the town hall. It was mapped as conservancy. The town hall's been there for, I don't know, 100 years. So they had to go through the rezone process and get out of that. You can see in this area, there's quite a bit of pink there. So even when getting rid of the Conservancy District, a good chunk of it's still going to be mapped as wetland. And then the other part of that is anything in orange right there is floodplain, which almost eliminates you from being able to build it unless you can demonstrate you're not actually in the floodplain. Go.
Okay, so you mentioned a recreational residential district. That's in here, but without a section number on it. And then I have recreational residential single family conservation, which has a section number on it. And nowhere does it say that once we lose conservancy, it's going to default to whatever. So I was under the assumption that it was going to go general purpose district.
I strongly recommend not doing general purpose.
I understand that, but there isn't any other, there's nothing in this document that says what it will default to. I don't think, unless I missed it, which, trust me, I could have.
Right. The next process is to rezone all those properties once the ordinance changes.
At whose expense?
It'd be one hearing. Blanket rezone.
A blanket rezoning.
What I'm going to apply, technically I'm applying to this committee to do exactly what I said.
So where does that leave the landowner?
It would be zoned as recreational residential where they can actually do something with their property as opposed to conservancy.
Versus general purpose district, which would really open up Pandora's box.
And if they want to apply to go to general purpose, they can do that on their own then.
Okay, so you're gonna default it to which residential, recreational,
Recreational residential, the R1C or the R,
RRC?
thank you.
Yep,
I don't believe we actually have anything. So it's in the ordinance, but it's not used. I'm not aware of any place in the county where it's mapped as that.
well, it's good, because I had some questions on it, so it's not, I couldn't find it, so, okay.
But that would be by a separate process after the ordinance changed, then I go through.
And that would come before the committee. And landowners would be notified that that's what's gonna happen, this is your opportunity. Okay, sure,
So just clarifying, no changes in their property taxes as a result of changing to.
Zoning and taxes, property taxes have absolutely nothing to do with each other, just one there.
so going back to what,
I'm sorry,
Go ahead, Bob.
Jody. That is because it lacks the value. It's not resaleable as a unrestricted piece would be. That's why the taxes are less on a conservatory.
I don't know that they are less on a
We're not any
conservative.
less.
Oh, yeah.
Because this isn't a
This is
conservatory.
not a conservative, yeah, finish it, Dusty, I'm sorry.
This isn't a conservatory. It's not a program you signed up for. It's nothing else.
Right.
It's just a district that you can't do anything in. For example, under comprehensive zoning, you have a farm field and you want to build a house, you have to change it to residential district. Zoning is a long-term thing. It's what we would like to see in an area. So we zone something gets zoned residential, it's like that forever until somebody applies to change it. It tells you what you can do on that property. If you have a farm field zoned residential, you're still gonna get taxed as ag.
My point, Dusty, was a farm out by us, and it's not in county zoning, it's, well, Strong's Ferry is not within. Maybe I'm talking.
They have their, Town of Sharpsburg has their own
Yeah,
general zoning ordinance, but the shoreline ordinance applies.
but the farm was converted to a conservatory. Fact is, it became much, much, much less valuable and saleable because it was a conservatory.
This is,
That was my point, that's all.
right, this isn't a conservatory.
Say that again.
This isn't a conservatory or anything like that.
It's
No,
two
you
different words.
wanna,
It's two different words, Bob.
okay,
I mean, I've got a conservancy district running right through the middle of my 40.
Yep.
That does not affect my taxes one bit. If a conservatory, like out on the bluff and like that, does affect your taxes because it's,
okay.
yeah, it's two, I know, and I understand, that's why I was trying to help.
The words are too close to each other.
Yeah, the words are too close to each
Yeah.
other, right, right.
I follow.
No, that's all right. It's a hard, because of that word, it's.
Dude,
Okay, so back to what Mr. Beta was saying. There's a couple things that are interrelated between shoreland and this zoning revisions. One is the mention of accessory structures. In shoreland, it's considered equal, one boathouse is equal to one accessory structure. So I can see where approving one before we actually hammer out the second would be problematic. The other is domestic animals, the limit number of those. Camping units, I think
so is
those
there a
aren't the
motion
same
hidden in there
either.
somewhere?
Pardon?
Is there a motion hidden in there somewhere?
Well, I'm bringing it,
Based on
To
what
the-
Mr. Beta said?
well, no, to the committee that there are things that cross blend between the two revisions, and I don't think you can approve one without making sure that your determinations in the other kind of match up and
So could we just suspend this public hearing until we do the next one? And then come back to this one? Instead of tabling and waiting a month?
Well. We're not doing a public hearing on the comprehensive ordinance.
So,
Asking for permission to go to the town
I'll make a motion
to,
to table this until we actually hammer out the zoning ordinance.
what he just said, we're not hammering out the ordinance.
I
You're getting
understand that we're
permission to
discussing
send it
it
to the
and then
town.
we're gonna go on to the next step, but I think until we actually have something firm and defined on the zoning ordinance provisions, it would be premature to go forward on the shoreline. So my motion is to postpone this decision on the shoreline zoning ordinance until such time that the comprehensive zoning ordinance details have been ironed out.
Okay, that's your motion.
That is
Do
my
we have a
motion.
second? Yeah. Motion and second to table this one until the general zoning is, comprehensive zoning is completed. Which may not be next month.
motion second. Okay. Speak on that.
Go ahead.
There's discussion. I don't
It's
know.
open for discussion.
But we're tabling a public hearing? As
Tabling
of right
any-
now is what you're asking? to do?
Tabling any further action on this ordinance.
Okay.
Right, so the. Specifically, one thing you mentioned was the boathouse. Doesn't really matter what the comprehensive ordinance says or anything we're changing in this. DNR says in our ordinance, we have to allow boathouses. So whether we can go 150 square feet or 400 square feet, what the shoreline ordinance says versus comprehensive. Doesn't matter, we still have to allow the boathouse. Like I said, any discrepancies, the more restrictive of the two always apply. That's because there's on any given property and especially in the water areas, there's actually probably 4 or 5 different ordinances that apply. So this is 2 that might apply. In Town of Sharpsburg Prairie, comprehensive zoning doesn't apply, doesn't matter what it says, but the shoreline ordinance would still apply. So for the two to match up identical, one thing that I felt was important is language at least. Instead of calling something a recreational vehicle, everything's a camping unit. That's the change in wording. But beyond that, they don't have to match. Or even be close to matching. For example, shoreline zoning, most of the time says you have to be, or it can say 10 feet to the property line, comprehensive zoning says you have to be 50 feet to the property line. It's not the case, but it can, and so in areas where comprehensive zoning applies, you would have to be 50. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and second to table any further action on this ordinance. Roll call vote.
Dolzel,
I say yes, I'm agreeing to table it, correct? Yes.
Beeson,
No,
Gilmer,
No.
Chaffee,
Yes.
Grabarski,
Yes.
Carbolio,
Yes.
Hannah,
Okay. Oops.
Yes.
Okay, motion to table passes. Next one is not a public hearing.
Okay, so the next one is the comprehensive zoning ordinance, is what I'm asking. This is reopened from last month. What I'm asking is that the ordinance as written goes out to the town. To let the town start ripping apart, give us their input on a much more local level. Ultimately, even with, and I don't remember if I said it last month or not. When the ordinances say revised, it goes through this committee, eventually the committee says yes. Goes to the full county board says yes. It's not in effect until it's, for lack of a better term, ratified by a majority of the towns. So in this one specific instance, the county board does not have final say. A majority of the towns still have to, which is why I've been pushing from day one to get it to the towns as quick as possible. To start getting their input so we can, I don't want to get to the end of the process and then find out that the towns hate the changes. I feel they should be step one. So what I'm asking in item number 13 is, and for those of you who didn't check out the agenda, I did divide it into two. There's the reorganized version, no rule change. The other part actually has changes. I mean, that actually the effect of a change of law. So I'm asking to get it out to the towns, and we do have the meeting next week for town officials, plan commission members, county board. But yes, I would like to get it out to the towns as soon as possible.
So we need a motion to put it out to the towns.
I'll make that motion.
Randy? Bob? Motion and second to put it out to the towns. Any further discussion? Jill?
Where do you want me to start? There is so much in this document that has me pausing. And one of the things that I'm going to quote, which you said in the last meeting, ordinances are to be reflective of current times. Dustin mentioned this in the last meeting, and I really kind of took it to heart. Sorry, thank you, Hannah. Yes, I would agree with that, but I also think they should stand the test of time. And in so doing, they need to go back to the basics, to just load more things on, to fix areas that are not, I don't want to say huge, that are a very little concern to other municipalities that fall under county zoning, I think are a mistake. So this revision is our opportunity as a committee to review proposed changes and to change language by removing, adding, or modifying the language of the zoning ordinance. And I'm sure everybody is aware at the community level, It's our job to oversee the functions of this office of the zoning administrator and to review and advise the governing body on all the proposed chapter, maps and text changes. So far, I haven't seen a map, by the way, that would reflect any of these changes. So I guess another word for oversee is protect. And it's our job to protect the rights of the landowners of our county. So with that in mind, I went through numerous times actually on the ordinance. And I have a lot of areas for concern. So I can't get behind the motion that's on the floor. And I don't know if now is the appropriate time to walk through all these pages of
Well, let's
changes.
wait and see what the towns want to do and we'll compare theirs.
See, that's where the problem exists. Whether the towns are calling Dustin, and I don't mean towns, but the citizens, the residents. They're calling me. I don't know if they're calling anybody else, but they're calling me. They're not happy. If they're not happy, what are we protecting? I mean, they are the tax base, right? So to me, their concerns should be our concerns. So before we go before town boards, we better go through the details and make sure that we're happy giving our stamp of approval. If I give you my blessing today, I'm saying, sure, go ahead and put it before the town board. I can't do that. I've heard way too much unhappiness with the changes that are being recommended to do that. So my question is, what do we do? I mean, we've got a motion on the floor. I can't get behind it.
This motion is just to send it out to the town.
I understand that, but now they have
They can
to
make their
filter,
changes.
yeah, but we should be the filter.
Why are you
And
afraid of
then-
taking it to the town, Joe?
I'm not.
It seems like it.
I'm not, no, because I have a feeling they're gonna come back and they're gonna say, I'm not happy with this, I'm not
Well,
happy
let
with
them.
this.
That's what we want to know.
Take that in.
But
we
I'm
get
part,
final
I'm
vote.
part of the town,
Yeah.
and I'm part of my residents and my constituents, and they're saying, why would you allow this to go forward? And by giving this blessing, I'm allowing it to go forward when I know darn well, I've got very, very unhappy people.
When it comes to your town, you make the changes.
Well, I would love to hear from other people on this committee, because so far, I cannot be the only one.
Jody, I have not
So-
had one single call protesting this.
Randy, I'm
And I
not
see a lot of
surprised.
people, a
I'm
lot
not
more than you see.
surprised.
And I see a lot more people than you see on an everyday basis.
That's probably true,
Well, it's
but
true.
my phone is ringing off its
I'm
finger.
being honest with you, I have
I'm
not
being
had
honest
one,
with you.
and I believe you,
And
but I have not
I
had one call.
think maybe it's because we can agree to disagree on certain topics.
Why
So
would they not
maybe-
call me?
Maybe they won't go to you.
I get calls
Because
every day on
someone is telling
roads,
you to
streets,
leave.
down,
I'm not-
garbage.
Kids,
You know,
kids.
I'm not actually saying that, it's just Town of Easton people that are calling me. And
Okay.
I'm gonna let that go at that.
All right, so, I think that, whether or not anybody has heard complaints or received complaints, the fact that our room has had more guests than we've seen in the last year combined for the last 2 meetings. I believe the majority of these people are here to voice or show their concern for the things that are written in these changes. I don't mean to speak for everybody, but if you raise your hands if you're here because you're concerned for this ordinance.
Yeah,
Okay.
I am.
So we can't say that there's no concern. We've never had a turnout like this. So we have to at least acknowledge, no offense, everybody, the elephant in the room. There's a lot of people here that have some very real concerns about what this means for them, for the future of their property and their real estate. So my point, I think it's in line with Jody. We're not saying that there's not necessarily need for change. We're concerned with the speed of which things are trying to happen and giving people the opportunity to voice their concerns at our level. Let's deal with the things that they absolutely don't like. And then we can send it to the towns for their final review and sign off, and talking to some of the town leaders. I've heard concerns with that initial survey as they didn't necessarily understand it for what it was. Not saying that you deceived them intentionally or anything along those lines, but their interpretation of what they were reading and responding to is different than the way they see it today. And a lot has changed in our world since that survey was taken. So nobody's trying to say that there's not a need for changing the codes or zoning or anything along those lines. We are saying let's involve everybody, or as best we can, hear the big concerns and deal with those before we hash this up and send it out to the towns. Because again, I agree with Jody when she says that we're putting our stamp of approval. My name's on that says, yeah, go ahead and we're okay with what's here. Tell us what you think. I'd rather be a lot more okay with what's in there and before we send it out to the towns for their review. And it takes hours to review. I mean, this is not anything. So, I mean, it took you 2 years to get it to here. So us taking 2 months doesn't seem unreasonable.
Randy,
I just think we need to get it out to more people, not 6 or 7 of us, to try and make all these changes. I think we need to see what, as the little survey that was a very simple survey did, it gave ideas back to us what they wanted. And that's how the camper ordinance with the holding tanks came into play, was from that. That's where that all started, was that in that little survey. And there's been no pushback on my township or anything I've heard about that ordinance, so it had to work. And it started at the town level, not at the county level.
Some of the concerns that I've heard are, clearly we're not a fan of tourists based on some of the ordinances that are in there. We obviously don't like dogs. We're attacking dogs through here. Those are the concerns. They're not that hard to fix. But I think that we have to take into consideration some of the things that have already been brought to our attention and try to resolve. Camping rules or storage of campers on people's property.
Yes.
Some of the things that are big bucket that I've heard repeatedly. I'm sure there's many more, but I'd like to give people the chance to voice their concern where they are here today to, show their support for their reluctance to let something like this slide through.
I guess I would say, I mean, I think that was saying it's trying to slide through. I think that's
To
doing the
clarify,
process very.
to clarify, that's not meant to be an insult on you. That is not it's not a jab. I promise you it's not. It's just that they feel like this is government trying to sneak something through, and I don't want them to feel that way. That's my opinion.
Right.
And when I say us, or government, I'm including myself in that statement.
Right. And as I said, I mean, my thought process is for that exact same reason, I think the general public has a tendency to go to their town board meetings more often than they do this. You're right, 30 people or 25 people here is one of our bigger crowds. We've had more. And that is important to note that they showed up here, but I think if you start taking all the town boards into consideration, I think a lot more people show up there. And again, at the end, even after you guys vote on it, it's not your decision. It's the town's decision. They're the ones that ultimately have to be happy. The other concern I kind of have is some of the I believe some of the people who are here aren't, this ordinance doesn't apply to them. And that's where going to the towns that actually are under county zoning, they should get a lot more weight than a town that doesn't have county zone. Would be my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, couple of things. One is, it's difficult, if not impossible, to manage by committee. And that's kind of where we're heading with some of this stuff. That being said, the purpose of the county board is for oversight, not management. And so with that in mind, It's hard not to let this thing proceed as you had proposed.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Anything?
Just so everybody understands,
Hold
this
on.
is not getting them
Okay.
adopted.
No, it's okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry to, this motion is not to adopt this ordinance. It doesn't change the law. It's simply to start getting input from the towns. So there's a number of process or steps in between now and adoption. One of them is a public hearing and on the county level to make sure that everybody has a say in this. Sorry.
Did you have something?
I do. What I think everybody is trying to get at here is to make this legible so that when it goes to the town, they won't be faced with the confusion that I've had just trying to read this damn thing. And there's so many areas that seem redundant that need to be cleaned up. And I think as a professional level, as my colleagues here, that I think we could put a better document together to bring to the towns. And it's just common sense. We need to clean it up.
Can I ask for details? So you're not talking like actually changing any,
Well, there's certain areas that are addressed several times. The pets, the dogs, the cats, okay? Let's fix it. It doesn't have to be this 20-page document talking about dogs and cats and kennels and every other damn thing. Let's clean it up. Make it simple so that when it comes to the town, they'll be able to read it without hesitation, that it's a good, professional designed document that we can enforce on a county level. Is that so hard? I don't think so.
But Don, and I think that's what I thought, we talked about this last meeting, that's what we were trying to do. We reduced it from a 101-page document to a 70-some page document.
But it's, we're on the right path, but it's not yet. We need to straighten it out and we need to professionally clean it up. And I don't know if we all need to sit around a round table and hash it out and go through paragraph 1. What do we want to do? Okay, well, wait a minute, that's already addressed down here on page 20. Well, do we need it on page 20 or can we make an index? If we're gonna talk about dogs, let's talk about dogs and cats on page 1. And on page 17, it's not gonna address dogs and cats again.
But Don, but the reason that is, if you read it carefully, it's because they're addressed in different.
I read it several times for 3 days now, trying to make common sense out of it, and it sucks.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't know how else to put it to you. It's really confusing, and if I can't understand it, how can these people understand it? And these are the people we're representing. So let's make it where we can understand it, so that when they have a question to us, we can tell them, hey, this is where this was generated from. And we tried to simplify it. You can only allow 5 dogs, 6 dogs, you got a kennel. You do apply to Dustin for a license.
But, and I could take your point totally. And so my first question to a constituent when they come to me on any issue of like this is, how are you zoned? I don't know, they say. I get on the computer with them, I pop up their zoning, you're R1. I don't look at the whole document. I go to their R1 zoning, and that's where the dogs and cats is, for that zoning. If you go to, if it's A1 zoning, you go to A1. That's where it's that, because you don't have the same dogs and cats in each zoning.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you have to have it redundant in each district, because there's different amounts and units allowed in each district.
On day 3, I figured that out, but it is confusing. I think there's gotta be a better way that we can make it legible for everybody to follow. I know we can do it. We have the talent there. We can do it. I'm done. Goodbye.
Hey, Jody,
So along with what Supervisor Carvillo is saying, there are instances in this documentation that refer back to some, thank you. There are instances in this documentation, thank you, Hannah, that refer back to sections that are no longer in place. So 40517 is now
Let's
40515.
vote on the motion at
But,
hand.
okay, so my concern is, we have a motion on the floor. When do we have the opportunity, if it isn't now, to address additions, removals,
When it comes
modifications?
back from the towns.
I want to do it now. So can we do it during this discussion period is what I'm
Let's
saying.
vote on the motion.
So you're
Vote no if you don't like it.
So you're stopping the process by saying we're voting on a motion without consideration to the language.
You're not talking.
We're
about
gonna
the
pass this on to a town without considering the language. That's okay, thank you.
motion. Okay, roll call vote.
Peterson,
Yes.
Milner,
Yes.
Chafee,
No.
Kowarski,
Yes.
Carvalho,
No.
Dolzel,
No.
Okay, tie vote fails.
I also say no.
Oh, yeah. 4 people, it definitely failed.
he cut me off.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'd like to make a motion that we address the concerns that are apparent in this document before passing it on to the town boards for consideration.
Mr.
I guess
Chair,
I don't know if you would need.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
related to that motion, so point of clarification. So when we make a motion to that, we need a little bit more specific on how that is accomplished.
well, can we even do that with this agenda?
No.
We voted not to pass it on, and that's the end of this.
Discussion.
Hmm.
I don't think we need a motion to discuss.
No. If we do the same thing.
Right.
So if you want specifics, I guess I go line by line. I don't know any other way to do it. There's a lot that,
70
I
pages
think
of line by line.
I think it's longer
I
than
think you and
that.
Dusty need to get together outside of this meeting.
Well, then it would be in the public and that would not be considered correct, right?
There would be a public hearing afterwards.
That's right, but the public needs to be part of the conversation, I think. We have
That's what we're trying
we
to
have
do, get it out to the
transparency,
town.
we have transparency, right?
But this is
Let's
not a
be
public hearing now,
transparent.
Jody.
I
on this
understand
one.
that. That's why I'm saying if we're just discussing it. I mean, how much time do you have?
Oh, let's stay till midnight.
So
Okay.
I guess I would, okay, I don't think you would need a motion for us to discuss it. I mean,
Okay.
like what you just said. We can discuss it. As far as going line by line, I think that's how, there's 3. Beyond the formatting and stuff like that, this is a draft, so as whether the reference to something else is incorrect. There's a lot of time to fix that and go through it about 14 more times. I mean, just myself even. The major changes from the way it's written, or from what it is now to the way it's proposed, would be about camping, accessory structures, unlicensed vehicles. That was it. Animals.
That's what currently exists in the ordinance. It is my understanding from Corporation Council that it is our opportunity to add things or request things to be added to the ordinance. And it's at this time. So is it now? When is it? Because
Well,
outside of the ordinance, there's additions that people are concerned with that I think we need to bring up before we give it to the town.
yeah, I mean, we need to create a draft, or there's a draft created, committee's not happy with it. I can put it, I mean. Committee agrees to add something to it, we can do that. At this point, because it is early in the process, I guess I would say, instead of going line by line and saying this exact wording needs to go in there, how about general direction? And I can put something together again for next month.
Question, can all the committee members, is it a possibility that committee members that have concerns, and I have concerns on some in here, I have notes also and highlighted, each submit our written concerns for you to look at, to start with, rather than sitting here and arguing about it for hours at a time. At least get started that way, would be a thought.
Yeah.
All right, so here's another idea along the same lines of where Randy's at. We've got 4 big buckets that we've already discussed, right? Can we just ask the folks that are here tonight, is there anything other than those 4 things that are of concern? Give it back to you, Dustin, and let you hear what people have to say about it, what their concerns are, and you can go rewrite, send it back to us. We can take a look at it 5 times between now and next month. To try and get this hashed out into something that we feel comfortable sending to the towns next month. Does that seem reasonable? Is that?
Well,
Is
the
that
only thing I got
legal?
there
Is
is
it-
Don, and I agree with that, but we've got 3 apparently. It's kind of a split vote that some of us think it's fine to send as it is right now with minor changes, and some think there's major changes.
But it's right now where we're at is it's nowhere. So
Right.
what I'm trying to do is help it get it somewhere so that we can stop this and get these changes or whatever those changes are made. But we've got a big group of people here tonight that can key us in on maybe some of the things if there's more than those 4 things that they're concerned about. So we can start going on the right path and streamline this a little bit. That's all I'm saying. In my opinion, in my idea, in my mind, it feels a lot faster this way. Dustin, do you have any objection to that? I mean, you're the writer, so.
He's the chairman.
Well, what I'm hearing is, again, we're involved in probably places we shouldn't be involved in my opinion. Everybody's got one. So with that being said, and I'm not sure that we are even in order to be doing all this, when we had a motion on the floor, it got voted down. I'm not sure we shouldn't be moving on. And the fact is, for us to sit here and haggle and not ask Dusty to redraft this as the points that have been brought up, we have no place to be doing this here at this meeting. I really think it's out of order.
I think so too. Joey?
So item 13 says reopen table discussion. If you're not going to discuss it now, when are you? Sorry. Item number 13, reopen table discussion of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. You're saying we're out of order, but isn't that what it's all about? We're supposed to be discussing it?
Well, we already had the mo- we- excuse
Yeah,
me,
but it
no, I
failed.
got
So
on
now
my-
we're back to not having a motion. So now we're under discussion. So I'm fine with what Supervisor Dolzell is recommending, but I have some notes from people that have called me that I would wish to be considered too in what Dustin is going to formulate, if that's, excuse me, if that's where we go.
Go ahead.
So a lot of times when DNR changes administrative code or, on a state level, everybody has to submit written comments within 30 days. So everybody submits, because I haven't heard from anybody on this. Not a single person in this room has called me that I know of except for, sorry, there's one. Submit comments to me by
February 1st.
yeah. February 1st, I won't have it.
From the board only.
No.
Well,
Well,
but if you're, Jody
we're not
wants
sending
the
it out to
board
the
to
towns.
have this.
I do, but I
No.
want everyone to be aware of how unhappy our residents are. And just to put this into perspective, R1 and R1 large lot affect, any changes that this ordinance makes to 36% of our zone properties, 36%. One fell swoop, when you change R1 and R1 large lot, you are affecting 36% of the zone properties. Another note to be made aware of is that 56 of the properties are owned out of town. So you need to get the word out. They need to be able to respond to you. And if they want anonymity, which I think is why they're calling me, you're not gonna have someone sending you a document. Sorry, I'll certainly do it. That's my job. That's why I was elected. So there you go.
Whether I get opinion or like written comments from anybody, or like Randy said, if we're not supposed to send it out to the towns and get the input that way because the committee wants to do it, at that point, it should almost be the written comments of the 7 committee members. By February 1st, I can put those together and if possible, try to redraft the ordinance to bring back or bring the 7 comments back or 7 submissions back for the committee to review. And I'm fine with that. And as committee members, I guess it'd be on you to go to your constituents and say, what do you think? And what do you want me to tell them? Or what do you want me to bring back to the committee? Or in this case, send it to me.
Dusty, if this is such a hot topic as it seems to be, why would we wait a whole month? I mean, it's just the very first part of January right now. January's a long month. So why not move that up to 10 days or a week earlier or some such a thing?
I'm not in a rush on this process. It's up to the committee. If you say 15 days, 30 days. Or who can?
I personally want to take it back to my board and discuss it with them as a town chair to see what they think and what their concerns are with this document. And that will give my constituents who will be at the meeting or we will have it on our agenda to come in and talk there. They're a lot more comfortable coming to my town hall than they are coming to the county courthouse.
I'd rather go to your town hall too. Jody.
So we have January 10th training coming up. It's gonna be recorded, so anyone and everyone can listen to it, regardless of what they do in our community. So public, maybe people that couldn't attend can listen to the recording. That's January 10th. To digest it and to maybe apply it to this language. I'll tell you one thing, it's been eating up a lot of my time. So for me to say, oh yeah, 15 days, oh, no problem. Well, no, okay, so January 10th is the training. Then we need to digest it, then we need to apply it. I'm not super comfortable with February 1st, but I'm more comfortable than a 10 or 15 day range. And just to not pick on anyone, but I have been to town monthly meetings and there's very low attendance at.
And I don't realize you're talking about, I don't know about your township, Jody. The meetings I was at your township were very well attended by issues just like this, and some of those same people are here today.
And you know what, town of Easton has a pretty good population coming in, not real good, if you consider our number.
Right.
I was actually referring to Springville, so now that you've
Right, I
brought
know
me
who
on
you're
the carpet.
But we did not have any-
I'm gonna tell you, that you don't have a lot of people at your meetings.
That's
so-
right, because it's not on our, we do not have those problems on our agenda.
Okay.
The meetings
You
I was
might,
at,
You might, so,
that would be good.
Yeah.
More people, the better.
all right.
The people the meetings I came to at your township, it was on your agenda to discuss this kind of an issue. And I will definitely put it on our agenda for next month.
All right. So February 1st, I'm fine with. I don't know, do you need to make a motion?
No, I got something to
There is
say.
no public discussion.
Okay,
No, not on those.
Mr. Chair. If you need a motion, I'll be more than happy to make a motion that we would send a response to Dusty by February 1st,
Committee
2023.
Committee.
Committee members only.
Motion's been made.
I will second that.
Motion's made and seconded. February 1st, get your comments into Dusty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next item.
All the financial reports on there? What's Lauren's fault? So, as I kind of talked about as we went throughout the year, very well, or doing very well numbers wise. The report in there is through the end of the year, I believe. Where's that number here? So we used about $80,000 less in tax levy than was budgeted. A lot of that was, I'm extremely busy, so permit fees were up. Number of permits we issued were up. The next item is the permit report, which overall, we were total of 18 permits higher than last year, but just the way the numbers worked out, the dollar amounts were a lot more. Type of permit makes a huge difference there. But I don't know where next year's gonna go with interest rates but I also kind of thought COVID and then lumber prices tripling and everything else would affect building, and it did affect it, just not the direction I was expecting. So, where 2023 goes, I guess is good enough. It'll be interesting. That's all I have for financial permit. Planning zoning division updates. He did stick around, but that was my update. Next Tuesday, there is the training for not training, seminar for town officials, planning commission, county board members, board of adjustment, any town officials, and department heads or department staff that regularly interact with our office. I will have the land and water division there as well, or at least a couple of them. For those of you on the county board, you're going to be tired of it. But I believe Carolyn is doing the county forest presentation again. You guys will get tired of that, but I felt it was important that the towns saw that information. It'll be a lot of just how the big topic for the day is going to be how a lot of the processes we go through, rezones, variances, the interaction between the town and the county level. I get calls on a regular basis, just confusion, what decisions are binding, what can a town do, what should they be looking at? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, and so far I think we got a pretty decent turnout. RSVP wise, I'm expecting a lot more this in the next couple of days. So that's all I have for updates.
Okay, public participation. Anybody have anything to say?
You knew it, right? So first off,
Maybe use a microphone, identify yourself and your address.
If you haven't heard from me enough, my name is Mark Beta, 1423 Evergreen Avenue, Town of Easton. And a couple things. One is I do disagree a little bit with that we cannot communicate with Dustin on our concerns. I think as a general public, it shouldn't just be committee members, it should be anybody. He works for us. So that's my first concern with that comment. I have a couple of things I just kind of want to throw out here. So what I did is I downloaded some data from the OpenGIS portal and came up with some numbers, which Jody had mentioned as well. Approximately 36% of all county zone properties are R1s or R1 LLs. So think about that as you're voting for things, that the impact it could have across the board. And approximately 50% of those mailing addresses associated with those properties are not on those properties, which means they're out of town somewhere. So when you're talking about how long to throw this to the towns, give it a couple months, let people, because people live out of state, they can't get here. So please, at least take that into consideration. A request I have is that this zoning board meeting, this board meeting, the committee meetings, be moved to a later time where the public can participate. 6 p.m., 5 p.m., something like that, but 3 p.m., middle of the week, middle of the workday. I have to take off work, other people have to take off of work. We're losing money. We could lose our jobs. This isn't fair for us to be able to participate in what could affects the biggest investment in our lives, our land. I do have a question then for Mr. Grant. Is that seminar, is that open to the public to attend?
No.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to first make a request, make a statement that 2 of the items, agenda items on there are a brief overview of the proposed comprehensive zoning ordinance revisions and questions from you, the participants, revision specific. Now, I feel that since there's going to be so many elected officials and appointed officials in the same room, passing questions back and forth, that there could be a quorum which violates the open meetings law.
Yep, so I've had corp counsel look into that, and because there's no action being taken and it's not a question before the board or that any of the members present, it's fine.
Okay, but with respect, the public needs to hear this. Once again, these zoning changes are impacting a lot of our lives. I don't know if you realize that, maybe because you haven't heard from us directly, but I'm conveying that to you. That some of the changes you're doing to R1s affect our lives, are the reasons we bought our property to begin with. And it really would be critical that you listen to us, or at least I can request that. Other than that, just please, that's all I can say. Please listen to us, Dustin. Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna respond to that. As far as being invited to the meeting, it is by invite only. I listed the groups that are involved. However, the whole meeting is getting recorded and I will post that on our website. And anybody can download it at that point. So you can see exactly what every person in that room said.
Well, not necessarily, because I watched a lot of the recordings. I watched a lot of recordings, and you can't see faces, you can't see micro expressions, you don't know who's talking. It's very difficult. I feel that the public at least should be allowed in the room, even if they can't say anything, to hear the information in real time, to see the micro expressions, see the body language, to understand what's going on, and to maybe even give us a better understanding of how zoning works.
Right. And that's why the recording will happen. And the recording will be available to you, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that it works. The state of Wisconsin federal government said that doing Zoom meetings is perfectly fine, and that's how I'm going to be recording it.
Okay.
As far as facial expressions go, I understand that, but I will make sure that it is posted on there and anybody can see it that chooses. I also want to address that I'm not concerned with your feelings. I know what.
I mean, at least it was public, thank you, and you're honest.
I've been doing this for 24 years, and I know what any of this means to a property owner. You know, so I was also one that raised my hand because I'm a property owner.
But you're not a property owner here.
No, but I'm under county zoning.
Marquette's a lot more liberal than we are in your zoning ordinances, at least from my research, for the things I'm talking about specifically. Specifically, my issues, yeah, well, we can get into that later, but what I'm saying is the decisions, the things you're putting in that document, you don't have to follow them. We do. And I don't know if you're listening to us, and I understand that you're not concerned with my opinion, but what about the hundreds, if not thousands of people in this county? Are you concerned about them at all?
Yes, which is why I keep requesting to get it to the towns to get the input from every single one of those people.
But you don't, that's the thing, you don't hear it. At least in these forums in this meeting, you can see some of us and kind of, you can gauge my micro expressions, you can hear my voice and hear my concerns directly to your ears, so you can put down things and make changes. Like, one of the things, like for me personally, that I think would benefit the county a lot is separate the R1s and the R1 LLs. Put them, give them more privileges to do. Right now with livestock and dogs, you can have them if you have certain acreage, you can have the animal unit per acre. Well, you're taking away that, you're not taking away, I'm sorry, you're moving that to conditional use. Well, a lot of people here, that's why they get their land, and we've always done it that way, and you're trying to take it away or make it more difficult to do. Why?
Okay.
Thank
you,
Yeah.
share the mic. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing very quickly. I would like to have.
Name and address, please, sir.
Am I too loud?
Name and address, please.
Scott Colburn, 952 County J, Adams Township. Several things I know. One, a lot of these agendas that you put out for townships aren't found by a lot of people, number one. Either out of lack of interest or lack of knowledge where to find them. So that's an issue, I think, just for a township perspective. Second thing is, I would like to see that you delay this a little bit longer so that they have more time, particularly committee members as well as the township, to have this over a period of a month or two for comment by their constituency, because not all of them, of course, will be here. Probably a third of them are out of state, okay, or Milwaukee. They don't even know this is going on. They will not have an opportunity probably till April, or maybe even know what happened. So that's another issue. But other than that, I'd like to commend the committee and on your discussion and the fact that you had an open discussion of what happened and that you are now going to address some of the issues that have been brought up by a variety of people. And I'm glad you had an open mind on it as a whole. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Jim Childs, 2785 9th Drive. And my concerns are these structures that you're saying you can only have 2 per property. Is that correct?
Do we want to get into specifics?
Here's my point. What about these people who got 10 hunting shacks on their property? Is that considered?
We do not regulate hunting shacks. Deer
Well,
lines,
it's-
hunting
that's a
shacks, play
structure.
structures.
It's a structure, correct?
Don't regulate them.
Okay. And what about camping? It's like you're trying to drive this out of the county. This is. People come here to enjoy themselves. They spend money, they're paying taxes, and now you want to push them out. It's not right. Why should somebody have to buy a permit to have a camper on their property that they might use 3 times a year or whatever? You got, you're regulating it to have septic tanks and all that, and that's fine. I understand that. That's not an issue. But when you make it so they can't have their camper on the property more than 7 days in a month, that becomes an issue. Not a lot of people want to drag their camper back and forth to wherever they keep it at, This is a tourist county. A lot of money come in from tourists, and you're gonna drive them out. Because I can tell you, I'm right on the edge of selling my property because of this.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Can I ask a question? Public
I suppose.
participation, okay. To reach the people that are out of town residents, Is there anything that we could put in the tax? Oh, no, they're already out, aren't
There
they?
you go.
Damn. Okay, never mind. Glad my microphone was on.
Okay, any correspondence? Yes, sir.
Top right in there. It's not gonna take long. On the issue of conservancy. Now, there's various reasons the people have a conservancy. Some want their conservancy status eliminated so they can develop the land. A financial reason. I feel my conservancy is protected by the state. And I would like that protection to continue. I don't want it developed. I enjoy it as a conservancy. And I'd like to have that included in your discussions later.
Thank you, sir. Correspondence, you said there wasn't any?
I don't know.
Okay, next meeting date, February 1st, 3 p.m. Committee members, don't leave until you sign the ordinance. And meeting's adjourned.